Hey guys, what's up? My name is Gabe and this is Games with Gabe, and welcome to the next episode of the Coding a 2D Game Engine in Java series. In this episode we are going to be doing this, which is getting docking integrated. So the ImGui branch we're using, SpaiR ImGui, now has docking enabled, and we're going to add it to our project because we can. You'll notice that I don't have the game viewport. You can actually sort of see it behind here. And so that's the whole reason we have frame buffers, because what we're going to be doing is this will become the game viewport, and we will use frame buffers to allow it to be able to be displayed as a texture within this ImGui window, within a new ImGui window. We'll see if we have time at the end of this tutorial to go ahead and do that, but if not, this is what we will get to for sure. Now, before we do start doing that, let's go ahead and fix up a few problems that we have that should have been fixed a while ago. So first we'll go into level editor scene, and up here we just set the active game object to the 0th game object, but we should check and see if GameObjects.size is greater than 0 before we do that, because if not, you will get an error here. So this just corrects that. It's really simple, but it's good to have because you don't want to be getting random errors all the time. Next, we have this to do that's been here forever. Let's actually fix it. And it's not that hard to fix too, so I don't know why I didn't do this sooner, but let's just go into texture. If you hit Control N too, by the way, you can just start typing and get to the class you're looking for. Let's remove this, and let's mark text ID as transient, which means we do not want to serialize the texture ID because that is dynamic. It changes from restart to restart, whereas the file path will stay the same every time. And that's the way we want it. So now that we have that marked as transient, we need to go into our sprite render and add a new method in here so that we can set the texture to what it should be. So we'll say public void set texture, and this will take in a texture object. Then we'll just say this .sprite.set texture. Alright, and now if we go into level editor scene, we can actually hook all this up. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to load all of our resources, okay? And if you remember, I had to do this to refresh myself too, so don't feel bad if you don't remember. I am opening up our text file real quick that contains our level data. So if we go into here and check out the level.txt, which at the moment is currently empty for me. Let's see if I can add some stuff real quick so that we can see something. Alright, so I'll drag a few things in here with some different textures just so that we can see. I mean, technically they're all the same texture. It's different texture coordinates and stuff. But now that we have some things in the scene, if we check this, you'll see that we have components and we have the sprite render. Then we store the texture, which has the file path, and the text chords. But remember, this is storing a texture object, a unique texture object for each one, because once we deserialize this, it creates unique texture objects. But our asset management system, if we look at this, the asset pool, we're actually doing it so that we only have one texture loaded in memory at any given time, and we just share that texture among our whole world. And so this becomes a problem because once we deserialize it, we get several textures, whereas we should only have one. So to fix this, what we do is as soon as it deserializes, we get a bunch of texture objects, and then we go into our level editor scene, and we have loaded everything by the time that we load the resources, because that happens somewhere up here. So we go down here and we say, okay, let's load all the resources. Then we'll go through each game object. And then if the game object has a sprite render, and if that sprite render has a texture, so we'll say sprite render SpaiR equals g.getComponent sprite render if SpaiR.getTexture does not equal null. So this means it did have a texture object and it just got loaded. What we're going to do is we're going to say SpaiR.setTexture assetPool.getTexture, and then we're going to say SpaiR.getFilePath, which we do not have. No, we do have this. It's just SpaiR.getTexture, not text chords, texture, .getFilePath. Okay, there we go. So what this does is we go through each game object. They each have a unique texture. And then what we say is, okay, now set that texture to the one texture that they should have from the asset pool. So then it grabs the asset pool's container. Their textures get set to null. Java garbage collects it all. They get rid of all that stuff. Then we end up only having one texture in memory at any given time, which fixes our problem of having issues when it came to saving the texture IDs. So now, if we go into our window class, we can see if we turn the frame buffer back on, that, or wait, no, the frame buffer has been on. Okay, yeah, so if we just load this back in, we shouldn't get any black textures anymore, yeah. So this is all working good, and then if we go into level editor scene, just to show you that this would be black if we didn't have this, if we remove this line, and then we go back in, we get black textures. So this fixes that problem just because now they're getting set according to their file paths and not according to the texture IDs, which is what it should be doing. All right. So that fixes the texture problem. Now let's add some docking support. What I'm going to be referencing is actually from the C++ version, because the ImGui port was just like, check the C++ version's documentation. So basically that's what we're doing. And if we go into the branches, just in case you want to like see what he did, what ocornut did, you can come here. And then we're going to go to docking, which is the branch. And then you can go into ImGui demo.cpp. And once this big file loads up, you can go down here, and I usually just do Control F and then say docking, because, yep, and then you see this says show example doc space. So what I do is I copy that function because that's the one we're looking for, and we'll go down, and this is what I will be following. So I've stripped a lot of this out because we just don't need a lot of it. So we just sort of have the bare essentials of what I'm going to be doing, but this is exactly what I'm going to be following if you want to actually check it out yourself and see a little bit more detail what ocornut did in his version. All right, but that's enough about that. Okay, so to get this up and running, first of all, what we have to do is go into our build.gradle, and we have to change this version. So actually, I probably should have left this up. If we look up SpaiR ImGui, which is the version I'm using, and by the way too, he has added Maven support. Yep, Maven support and rawjar support. So that's good if you want to use either of those methods. But if we go into here, you'll notice that he is now using version 1.77-0.17.1. So we'll copy all of that. And then actually, if you just look at the Gradle build too, you'll see it says it right here. So we'll copy that, go into here, and then we'll paste it right here instead. So now we have the correct version. Let's import those changes by clicking down there. Gradle will import it. And by the way, if you accidentally exit out of that too, I can't see it right here because of the way I have this in presentation mode, but you should see a little Gradle build thing up here, and then you can click on that and then click import or refresh or something, and it should import it. Okay, so now that we have that, we do have the project. So let's go ahead and implement docking. Go into ImGui layer, because this is where we have all of this stuff happen. And what we're going to do, first of all, because this happens, I forgot about this too. It looks like he might have changed some of these, the naming. So instead of, you're going to have a lot of errors. So just hit Control or Alt Enter, and then hit Import Class. That should fix that. And then hit Alt Enter, Import Class. That should fix that. Alt Enter, Import. Alt Enter, Import. And then once you get a few of these done, it should fix itself. And then we'll hit Alt Enter, Import. And then I'm going to go up here. If you just remove all these, it'll import the rest. And you should be good. So now this is working fine again. If you run it, it should still run the same as we just had it a minute ago. And you see that it does, so that's good. Next, what we want to do is every frame, we are going to have to start our doc space. So we're going to write a new function right here, and we'll just call this setup doc space. And that will set up our doc space for us. And inside of here, we will sort of do all of what we need to have done. So let's scroll down to the bottom, and we'll say private void setup doc space. And once again, this is just like the show example doc space from ImGui. So first thing we're going to do is set the window flags to be ImGui window flags dot menu bar, so it always has a menu bar, or ImGui window flags dot no docking. So this is sort of the parent window, and it's a little bit weird. I'll show you exactly why we have this one as no docking, and then there's like another window that is the docking window, and this will make sense once we actually do this in just a second. Okay, then we're going to say ImGui.set next window pose 0.0f 0.0f ImGui.const.always. So this will always be the entire window's size. So what we're doing is we're saying make sure it starts at the top left of the window, and it is the window's width and the window's height. We'll say ImGui.set next window size, and like window is obviously an overloaded term here. So when I say the window as in our main window, and then this is like the main window of ImGui. So yeah, it can get a little confusing. So then if we do that, we should be good. Now the main ImGui window will take up the main size of the window of our application. And then we'll say ImGui.push style var. So this is just a style variable, and we'll say ImGui style var dot window rounding. Dot window rounding is 0.0f, and I will change this to ImGui. I'm just going to duplicate that, and then we also need to set window border size to 0. Then we need a few more window flags. So we'll say window flags or equals bitwise or ImGui window flags dot no title bar, or ImGui window flags dot no collapse. So you can't collapse it. It has no title bar. ImGui window flags dot, and I'm gonna move this to the new line because that's easier. No resize, or ImGui window flags dot no move, not no mouse input, but no move. Or, and then we'll go to another new line. We'll say ImGui window flags dot no bring to front on focus, or ImGui window flags dot no nav focus. And what these last two do is this just makes sure it's always behind everything, since this is like the main window we dock into, sort of. And then this just makes sure that when you click it, it doesn't actually focus on it because it's not a focusable window. It's just sort of there. So that should be all the window flags we need. Okay, next we'll actually create the window. So we'll say ImGui.begin doc space demo, and then we can call this something different if you want. And we're going to pass in a new ImBoolean true. This is always going to be true. We don't care. They're not going to be able to close it, so it doesn't matter. And we're passing the window flags because we have it as no collapsible right here. So this means that even if they were to press the X button or whatever, it wouldn't actually close this main window. Now we're going to say ImGui.pop style var, since we already used those styles. 2, we need to pop 2 since we pushed 2 right here. We pushed 2 on the stack, we popped 2 off. Then we have one more thing, which is the dock space. But I'm not going to do the dock space immediately because I want to show you what happens if you don't. So one last thing we have to do, we began a window. That means we have to end a window, because if we don't, if we run this, you're going to see you get this weird error which says g.current window stack size equals 1. And then it actually gives you a helpful hint. It says mismatch begin child versus end child. Did you forget to call end or end child? And we did, right? Because we have this ImGui.begin right here, but we don't have the end. Thing is, we want to end it after we've done all of our other ImGui stuff. So you see we set up the dock space, we current scene ImGui, then we show the demo window. Before we render, we just need to make sure that we end. So we'll say ImGui.end here. Preferably I would do it in end frame, but that's after we render. We have to make sure we do this before we render, so we might change this up in the future, but for now that works. So now, if we run this, we're going to get one big window in the back. So you see we got one big window with a title bar, but there's a problem. What happens if I try and dock this? I can't dock it into that window, which is kind of weird. Oh no, I forgot some other stuff. Okay. I was about to show you what happens, and it doesn't even work because we never actually enabled docking. We have to go all the way up to the top first. So when we're initializing ImGui, okay, right up here. So when we're setting all the flags and stuff up here on line 30, we need to make sure that we set up the config flags for docking to be enabled. So we'll say set the docking enable flag. That way we actually have docking enabled. There we go. Now, if we go, you can see that I can dock into other windows, but I can't dock into this window. And it's like, okay, why is that not working? And remember, it's because we put this flag down here. We said no docking, right? Okay, well, let's just comment that out, right? We want to be able to dock into the main window, right? But then you get this problem. If I do this, it takes up the whole screen size. That's not cool. And then you gotta do weird stuff to get it small enough again. And that's annoying. And no matter what you do, you'll see that you have this problem every time. So that's because you didn't actually set up docking correctly. What you're supposed to do is do this no docking thing, and then you set up this thing called the dock space. And so when you go down here, you say imgui.setup.dockspace. Okay, so you say imgui.dockspace, and then we're going to say imgui.getID dockspace. All this does is it's just a hash function, so it's just hashing this into some string or some number, and then we just set the dockspace's ID as that number. So this will enable our docking, and actually can't go quite yet. Okay, yeah, that is unchecked. So make sure that's no docking, and then we set up the dock space. Now we can go up here, and you'll notice it only takes up half the size, like only a little bit, the normal size of the window. And so that's just sort of ImGui's way how it works. But now you see we can actually move things around, and we have docking working properly. But like I said before, there's a problem. You can't see your game anymore. You can sort of see it here in the back, but we want it to be right here, right? And so that's where frame buffers come in. But we are running out of time. So in the next episode, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up an extra window here where we will render everything into our frame buffer. Then we'll draw that texture. So the frame buffer is just a texture, remember? And we'll draw that texture plastered across this screen as big as we can. And that way we have some access to a game viewport. That will bring in some new problems, though, that we will take a look at then. I do want to mention one more thing. I've been hesitant on how much I should do in this Java version because I think that if you're going to do a full game engine, you should do it in C++. Typically, I would say if you want to make a game, make it in whatever language you want because it really doesn't matter. But C++ does give you more control over some things that are kind of important, and it can let you access more speed when you need it, which is kind of important for a game engine. So I don't know how far we're going to take this Java version, but I definitely want to eventually start in the future a C++ version tutorial, which isn't that bad. I promise I've been doing it. It may seem daunting, but C++ ends up giving you more speed in the long run, and it gives you more flexibility to do other things. It just makes some things easier. For example, scripting languages. So we'll see how far we take this. We may just take it till we complete Mario and stuff and have a basic engine. You guys can extend it if you want to, more in Java. But yeah, we'll see about that. And one last thing I want to mention too is I start my new job next week. So I am going to have a lot less free time. That means I don't know if I'll be able to do 2 tutorials a week. I'm going to try. I'll see how it goes next week. I'm going to try and do 2 tutorials, but I might just be so burnt out from my job and stuff that I can only get 1 in a week. So it may be, we may have less time to do these because I also want to work on my game engine, the things that I'm working on personally and stuff too. We'll see how that goes too and stuff. I'm hoping that I'll still have enough energy to do 2 tutorials and work on my game engine and do my job. We'll see about that. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.